Chapter 53. The clergy, the forests, liberty. The first law of every being is to preserve itself and live. You sow hemlock and expect to see ears of corn ripen. By Machiavelli, the great personage continued. One could see that he knew his subject. He proceeded to expound the following great truths with a soft and tempered eloquence with which Julien was inordinately delighted. 1. England has not a guinea to help us with. Economy and Hume are the fashion there. Even the saints will not give us any money, and Brougham will make fun of us. 2. The impossibility of getting the kings of Europe to embark on more than 2 campaigns without English gold. 2 campaigns will not be enough to dispose of the middle classes. 3. The necessity of forming an armed party in France. Without this, the monarchical principle in Europe will not risk even 2 campaigns. The 4th point which I venture to suggest to you, as self-evident, is this: the impossibility of forming an armed party in France without the clergy. I am bold enough to tell you this, because I will prove it to you, gentlemen. You must make every sacrifice for the clergy. Firstly, because as it is occupied with its mission by day and by night, and guided by highly capable men established far from these storms at 300 leagues from your frontiers. Ah, Rome, Rome, exclaimed the master of the house. Yes, Monsieur Rome, replied the cardinal haughtily. Whatever more or less ingenious jokes may have been the fashion when you were young, I have no hesitation in saying that in 1830 it is only the clergy, under the guidance of Rome, who has the ear of the lower classes. 50,000 priests repeat the same words on the day appointed by their chiefs, and the people, who after all provide soldiers, will be more touched by the voices of its priests than by all the versifying in the whole world. This personality provoked some murmurs. The clergy has a genius superior to yours, went on the cardinal, raising his voice. All the progress that has been made towards this essential point of having an armed party in France has been made by us. At this juncture facts were introduced. Who used 80,000 rifles in Vade? Etc., etc. So long as the clergy is without its forests, it is helpless. At the first war, the Minister of Finance will write to his agents that there is no money to be had except for the cure. At bottom, France does not believe, and she loves war. Whoever gives her war will be doubly popular, for making war is, to use a vulgar phrase, the same as starving the Jesuits. Making war means delivering those monsters of pride, the men of France, from the menace of foreign intervention. The cardinal had a favorable hearing. M. de Nerval, he said, will have to leave the ministry. His name irritates and to no purpose. At these words everybody got up and talked at the same time. I will be sent away again, thought Julien, but the sapient president himself had forgotten both the presence and existence of Julien. All eyes were turned upon a man whom Julien recognized. It was M. de Nerval, the prime minister, whom he had seen at the Duc de Retz's ball. The disorder was at its height, as the papers say when they talk of the chamber. At the end of a long quarter of an hour a little quiet was established. Then M. de Nerval got up and said in an apostolic tone and a singular voice, I will not go so far as to say that I do not set great store on being a minister. It has been demonstrated to me, gentlemen, that my name will double the forces of the Jacobins by making many moderates divide against us. I should therefore be willing to retire, but the ways of the Lord are only visible to a small number. But, he added, looking fixedly at the cardinal, I have a mission. Heaven has said, you will either loose your head on the scaffold or you will re-establish the monarchy of France and reduce the chambers to the condition of the Parliament of Louis XV. And that, gentlemen, I shall do. He finished his speech, sat down, and there was a long silence. What a good actor, thought Julien. He made his usual mistake of ascribing too much intelligence to the people. Excited by the debates of so lively an evening, and above all by the sincerity of the discussion, M. de Nerval did at this moment believe in his mission. This man had great courage, but at the same time no sense. During the silence that followed the impressive words, I shall do it, midnight struck. Julien thought that the striking of the clock had in it a certain element of funereal majesty. He felt moved. The discussion was soon resumed with increasing energy, and above all with an incredible naivety. These people will have me poisoned, thought Julien at times. How can they say such things before a plebeian? They were still talking when 2 o'clock struck. The master of the house had been sleeping for some time. De la Mole was obliged to ring for new candles. De Nerval, the minister, had left at the 1:45, but not without having repeatedly studied Julien's face in a mirror which was at the minister's side. His departure had seemed to put everybody at their ease. While they were bringing new candles, the man in the waistcoats whispered to his neighbor, "God knows what that man will say to the king. He may throw ridicule upon us and spoil our future." One must own that he must possess an unusual self-assurance, not to say impudence. To put in an appearance here there were signs of it before he became a minister, but a portfolio changes everything and swamps all a man's interests. He must have felt its effect. The minister had scarcely left before the general of Bonaparte closed his eyes. He now talked of his health and his wounds, consulted his watch, and went away. "I will wager," said the man in the waistcoats, "that the general is running after the minister. He will apologize for having been here and pretend that he is our leader." "Let us now deliberate, gentlemen," said the president, after the sleepy servants had finished bringing and lighting new candles. "Let us leave off trying to persuade each other. Let us think of the contents of the note which will be read by our friends outside in 48 hours from now. We have heard ministers spoken of. Now that de Nerval has left us, we are at liberty to say what we do care for ministers." The cardinal gave a subtle smile of approval. "Nothing is easier, it seems to me, than summing up our position," said the young bishop of Agde, with the restrained, concentrated fire of the most exalted fanaticism. He had kept silent up to this time. His eye, which Julien had noticed as being soft and calm at the beginning, had become fiery during the first hour of the discussion. His soul was now bubbling over like lava from Vesuvius. "England only made one mistake from 1806 to 1814, he said, "and that was in not taking direct and personal measures against Napoleon. As soon as that man had made dukes and chamberlains, as soon as he had re-established the throne, the mission that God had entrusted to him was finished. The only thing to do with him was to sacrifice him. The scriptures teach us in more than one place how to make an end of tyrants." At this point there were several Latin quotations. "Today, gentlemen, it is not a man who has to be sacrificed, it is Paris. What is the use of arming your 500 men in each department, a hazardous and interminable enterprise? What is the good of involving France in a matter which is personal to Paris? Paris alone has done the evil, with its journals and its salons. Let the new Babylon perish. We must bring to an end the conflict between the Church and Paris. Such a catastrophe would even be in the worldly interests of the throne. Why did not Paris dare to whisper a word under Bonaparte? Ask the canon of St. Roch." Julien did not leave with de la Mole before 3 o'clock in the morning. The Marquis seemed tired and ashamed. For the first time in his life in conversation with Julien, his tone was plaintive. He asked him for his word never to reveal the excesses of zeal, that was his expression, of which chance had just made him a witness. "Only mention it to our foreign friend, if he seriously insists on knowing what our young madmen are like. What does it matter to them if a state is overthrown? They will become cardinals and will take refuge in Rome. As for us, we shall be massacred by the peasants in our chateaux." The secret note into which the Marquis condensed Julien's full report of 26 pages was not ready before 4:45. "I am dead tired," said the Marquis, "as is quite obvious from the lack of clearness at the end of this note. I am more dissatisfied with it than with anything I ever did in my whole life. Look here, my friend," he added, "go and rest for some hours, and as I am frightened you might be kidnapped, I shall lock you up in your room." The Marquis took Julien on the following day to a lonely chateau at a good distance from Paris. There were strange guests there whom Julien thought were priests. He was given a passport which was made out in a fictitious name, but indicated the real destination of his journey, which he had always pretended not to know. He got into a carriage alone. The Marquis had no anxiety on the score of his memory. Julien had recited the secret note to him several times, but he was very apprehensive of his being intercepted. "Above all, mind you look like a coxcomb who is simply traveling to kill time," he said affectionately to him when he was leaving the salon. Perhaps there was more than one treacherous brother in this evening's meeting. The journey was quick and very melancholy. Julien had scarcely got out of the Marquis's sight before he forgot his secret note and his mission, and only thought about Mathilde's disdain. At a village some leagues beyond Metz, the postmaster came and told him that there were no horses. It was 10 o'clock in the evening. Julien was very annoyed and asked for supper. He walked in front of the door and gradually, without being noticed, passed into the stable-yard. He did not see any horses there. That man looked strange, though, thought Julien to himself. He was scrutinizing me with his brutal eyes. As one sees, he was beginning to be slightly skeptical of all he heard. He thought of escaping after supper, and in order to learn at any rate something about the surrounding country, he left his room to go and warm himself at the kitchen fire. He was overjoyed to find there the celebrated singer, Signor Geronimo. The Neapolitan was ensconced in an armchair which he had brought near the fire. He was groaning aloud, and was speaking more to himself than to the 20 dumbfounded German peasants who surrounded him. "Those people will be my ruin," he cried to Julien. "I have promised to sing tomorrow at Mayence. 7 sovereign princes have gone there to hear me. Let us go and take the air," he added meaningly. When he had gone 100 yards down the road, and it was impossible to be overheard, he said to Julien, "Do you know the real truth? The postmaster is a scoundrel. When I went out for a walk, I gave 20 sous to a little ragamuffin who told me everything. There are 12 horses in the stable at the other end of the village. They want to stop some courier." "Really," said Julien innocently. Discovering the fraud was not enough. The thing was to get away, but Geronimo and his friends could not succeed in doing this. "Let us wait for daybreak," said the singer at last. "They are mistrustful of us. It is perhaps you or me whom they suspect. We will order a good breakfast tomorrow morning. We will go for a walk while they are getting it ready. We will then escape. We will hire horses and gain the next station." "And how about your luggage?" said Julien, who thought perhaps Geronimo himself might have been sent to intercept him. They had to have supper and go to bed. Julien was still in his first sleep when he was woken up with a start by the voices of 2 persons who were speaking in his room with utmost freedom. He recognized the postmaster armed with a dark lantern. The light was turned on the carriage seat which Julien had taken up into his room. Beside the postmaster was a man who was calmly searching the open seat. Julien could see nothing except the sleeves of his coat, which were black and very tight. "It's a cassock," he said to himself, and he softly seized the little pistol which he had placed under his pillow. "Don't be frightened of his waking up, cure," said the postmaster. "The wine that has been served him was the stuff prepared by yourself." "I can't find any trace of papers," answered the cure. "A lot of linen and essences, pomades and vanities. It's a young man of the world on pleasure bent. The other one who affects an Italian accent is more likely to be the emissary." The men approached Julien to search the pockets of his traveling coat. He felt very tempted to kill them for thieves. Nothing could be safer in its consequences. He was very desirous of doing so. "I should only be a fool," he said to himself. "I should compromise my mission." "He is not a diplomatist," said the priest after searching his coat. "He went away and did well to do so. It will be a bad business for him," Julien was saying to himself. "If he touches me in my bed, he may have quite well come to stab me, and I won't put up with that." The cure turned his head. Julien half opened his eyes. He was inordinately astonished. He was the Abbé Castanede. As a matter of fact, although these 2 persons had made a point of talking in a fairly low voice, he had thought from the first that he recognized one of the voices. Julien was seized with an inordinate desire to purge the earth of one of its most cowardly villains. "But my mission," he said to himself. The cure and his acolyte went out. A quarter of an hour afterwards, Julien pretended to have just woken up. He called out and woke up the whole house. "I am poisoned," he exclaimed. "I am suffering horribly." He wanted an excuse to go to Geronimo's help. He found him half suffocated by the laudanum that had been contained in the wine. Julien had been apprehensive of some trick of this character, and had supped on some chocolate which he had brought from Paris. He could not wake Geronimo up sufficiently to induce him to leave. "If they were to give me the whole kingdom of Naples," said the singer, "I would not now give up the pleasure of sleeping. But the 7 sovereign princes? Let them wait." Julien left alone, and arrived at the house of the great personage without other incident. He wasted a whole morning in vainly soliciting an audience. Fortunately, about 4 o'clock the Duke wanted to take the air. Julien saw him go out on foot, and he did not hesitate to ask him for alms. When at 2 yards distance from the great personage, he pulled out the Marquis de la Mole's watch and exhibited it ostentatiously. "Follow me at a distance," said the man without looking at him. At a quarter of a league's distance the Duke suddenly entered a little coffee-house. It was in a room of this low class in that Julien had the honor of reciting his 4 pages to the Duke. When he had finished he was told to start again and go more slowly. The prince took notes. "Reach the next posting station on foot. Leave your luggage and your carriage here. Get to Strasbourg as best you can, and at 12:30 on the 22nd of the month, it was at present the 10th, come to this same coffee-house. Do not leave for half an hour." Silence. These were the only words which Julien heard. They sufficed to inspire him with the highest admiration. That is the way, he thought, that real business is done. What would this great statesman say if he were to listen to the impassioned ranters heard 3 days ago? Julien took 2 days to reach Strasbourg. He thought he would have nothing to do there. He made a great detour. If that devil of an Abbé Castanede has recognized me, he is not the kind of man to lose track of me easily. And how he would revel in making a fool of me and causing my mission to fail. Fortunately, the Abbé Castanede, who was chief of the Congregational Police on all the northern frontier, had not recognized him. And the Strasbourg Jesuits, although very zealous, never gave a thought to observing Julien, who with his cross and his blue tailcoat looked like a young military man, very much engrossed in his own personal appearance.